Wow, welcome everyone. Today I have a new build for Barbarian for Season 3 for the charge build. As you guys can see behind me, I'm currently level 80. I'm fighting level 104 monsters. So this is a tier 50 dungeon. Not the hardest, but it's very smooth. And I just want to show you guys the power of my updated build at the moment. This is still a hybrid build that I'm using the Helm of Ancient, but I'm utilizing a lot of bonus damage, and you can see the tier 50 monsters dies in pretty much one hit. Almost everything melts, and if they don't die in one hit, they will die in the second hit, right? So I just want to show you the power of this build, and also how flexible and also how smooth it is. You'll be pushing monsters around, they'll be exploding, and you have so much mobility, so much, I guess, positional enjoyment in terms of this build. And yeah, I will provide you guys with the entire replay of this entire dungeon. Now I have fought bosses, and we don't have any trouble with bosses as well because we're Helm of Ancient. But unfortunately for this replay, it doesn't have a boss in this entire dungeon. But you can see, everything melts pretty much in one hit because we'll be amplifying the damage as they explode onto themselves. And as I speed through this dungeon, you can see that you can be solo leveling, you can be playing with your friends using this Barbarian build, and it is wonderful. You have lots of flexibility with AOE damage, you also have so much mobility with charge, and finally you have some really good single target damage with Helm of Ancient at this stage of the game. So this is a really fun build. Now over here I have made my mobility builder for this build, and you guys can see there's a variation. And I think previous videos I have had questions asking, hey, how come you're using Whirlwind, but in the actual gameplay and in the video you're using Helm of Ancient? So let me try to explain. This is my ultimate goal for the end game, and that's what I was planning for the end game. But at the moment I'm still transitioning from the end game or mid game to the end game, and I'm still lacking a bit of the stats on my gears, and also I'm still lacking the perks on the Paragon board. So at the moment, because I'm semi-transitional between Helm of Ancient and also Charge, I'm using both of the effect. So this is going to be great for the mid game and also still work for the end game. And yes, if you guys want to look at the mobility builder, definitely have a look at this one. I will adjust the build so you guys can see the end game adjustment and also my current adjustment. So going through my highlights, you can see the build itself of course, but I just want to highlight a few things. If you have dealing direct damage with bleeding, this is wonderful. This means you'll be doing 40% to 60% additional damage if you're using this on a two-hand weapon. I was fortunate to find a tier, item level 900 plus in the tier 50 dungeons. So doing tier 50 or doing like tier 47 plus dungeons is really worth it for level 100 plus monsters. Second to that, you want a two-handed weapon that provides you guys with explosion damage. This is actually really underrated for the charge build, but it is massively powerful. So those two go factors allows me to deal way more damage than most of the other two-handed weapon effects, and this is really powerful. I'm also using the lower cooldowns of my brawling skills, and this allows me to spam more brawling skills against multiple enemies as I get cooldown reduction. Now because I'm going with the Fury for the Helm of Ancient, I'm still gaining some shots. I'm still getting some Fury through shots, and this is why you can see this ring. I was fortunate enough to find this Berserker's helmet. I don't think it will do too much for my charge build, but we're getting some defensive through the aggressive resistance, and also we're getting some bonus damage through Berserk, and this is the reason I'm using this. Other than that, my chest piece is a pretty mediocre piece with a moderated 2000 armor, and the pants also gives me a bonus to my armor. So I'm using the Disobedience and also the new aspects to provide me with a little durability. I'm getting a little bit increased damage with additional resource, and here we'll be using swapping weapons with overpower to deal more overpower damage. And of course we have the Helm of Ancient, right? So Helm of Ancient and also the charge with 4 ancients are the hybrid flexibility of this build. So briefly going through the skill trees, I have opted for gaining more Fury at the moment, but I'm planning to remove this one and also go into more utility or also more damage. Now nothing too major because it's a hybrid build, you guys can see in the builder, so the difference. I'm not using ultimate because we do not have a skill slots at the moment. And as for ultimates, I am planning to use the Wrath of Berserker to replace Launch Strike in the future once I don't feel I have the need for the Helm of Ancient. As for the Paragon board, I At the moment, I have perked out into 4 glyphs. So the first glyph, I'm going with close damage reduction, just with some damage reduction because I don't really have a great glyph here. The second glyph, I'm going with a berserking damage. After that, I'm going with martial, and this is the crucial glyph. Initially, I had the glyph over here, so this is the first glyph I'm using for my build. I need the cooldown reduction. And finally, I'm going with a bit of bonus brawling damage. And yes, this is followed almost exactly to my builder's guide over here to the Paragon board. Now, as for my construct little pet, I'm currently going with Flash of Adrenaline, which provides me with additional cooldowns, additional duration, and also more effect. As for the damage one, I'm going with Impel, which provides me with critical chance, attack speed, and also critical damage. So very standard, but very useful. Now, briefly going through the skill rotation for the charge build. Right away, you can see you want to be charging enemies then casting your shot, because the purpose of your shot is to serve your utility purpose and also lowering the cooldowns of charge. You want to charge at least one enemy, I was going to mention about the death after. So you want to charge at least one enemy, but if you can, charge at an angle that you can charge multiple enemies, and this will give you a lot of explosion damage. Even if you're charging one enemy, you're doing tons of damage. Just make sure you're behind the enemy when you're charging to push them into multiple enemies. Now, do be aware guys, our build is a little bit squishy if you stand in an explosion. Well, this is kind of given, right? So I have died once during the replay, I just want to show you guys. Other than that, the build is very simple. You'll get used to it as you go through the rotations of the charge. You charge first into multiple enemies, they all die, you cast one shot, and then your charge is back on cooldown, or back reset the cooldown, and then you charge again. So having 3 shots ready means you can charge multiple times. Sometimes you can wait a little bit, let your procs to lowering the cooldowns, because you have a chance of lowering the charge cooldown as well. So sometimes when you charge into 5+ enemies, your cooldown is instantly resetted, and this is quite powerful. Now, because we're using swapping weapons to gain overpower, you do want to attack with basic attack and also the Helm of Vengeance, swapping them alternatively, and this will allow you to get the most charges. You don't have to keep a track of the 8 attack because most of the time you just kills everything in one shot. So this is a really fun build, and it's insanely good for solo leveling, for party leveling, and also for higher content clear for the Barbarians. Now, before we finish, I'll provide you guys with a very short replay of me playing in the dungeon. Unfortunately, the voice or the audio was not recording in the fights, so you might not hear any sound. But you can just see how I was playing and also how I go through the dungeon. It is very smooth, even though I backtrack a little bit because I missed one of those monsters. Well, it was pretty silly.